With the NBA offseason mostly over and all these different players having moved around, it gives us a pretty fresh looking NBA. A lot of teams got complete makeovers and others just added a lot of great pieces, which means we now need to take a look at what the best starting fives in the NBA today are. You know the rules, we're ranking these top 10 just based on how good their starting lineups are, not really based on how their record will turn out or how good these teams will be as a whole. But before we do, quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, DraftKings, who's the leader in daily fantasy sports, and they're putting you in the center of the action with a shot at millions of dollars in prizes every week of the regular football season. So get in on all the action now. And if you've never played fantasy football before, you're missing out because it's easy to set up and it's a lot of fun. You start off drafting 9 players, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, and 1 defense. But each player has an assigned value based on how good they are and how many points they're predicted to get. But it's up to you to put together a team that you think will get the most points while also staying under the $50,000 salary cap. Then as the games go on, you rack up fantasy points for touchdowns, yards, field goals, and so much more. It's something that you can keep track of while you're watching the games, and it makes them all a lot more fun. And even if you aren't able to actually watch, it's still a good way to keep up and stay updated with what's going on because you can view DraftKings straight from your phone. And on top of that, don't forget it's fun, but you're still competing for millions of dollars in prizes. So new users use my promo code Austin during sign up for your shot at all those prizes with your first deposit. Big shout out to DraftKings. Now back to the video. Number 10, the Chicago Bulls with Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, and Nikola Vucevic. Listen, these guys only come in at 10 because they have a lot of competition ahead of them, but I really love this lineup and it's one of my favorites of the entire video. The Bulls were able to do way more this offseason than anyone thought they would. They signed Lonzo, DeRozan, and got back way more than they should have for Markkanen, and it's given them a solid playoff squad for this upcoming year. I'm excited to see what they can all do together, and of course, if they exceed expectations, they will have deserved to rank higher. You know, you gotta be cautious because they're still the Bulls and have still had a terrible track record recently. But it'd be pretty hard to screw this up now because everyone in this lineup can shoot near 40% from 3. They have 2 solid big men in Williams and Nikola that can score on the block or spread the floor. LaVine that can do it all. And I think if it's ever gonna happen, it'll be this season that Lonzo Ball has a breakout year. He could do huge things in this backcourt, and even if not, and he still plays the same at the same pace, they'll still be set. And I don't love DeRozan's game, but his scoring leadership and ability to post up and score to create instant offense that they can use whenever they're going through a slump makes this overall a great squad. Number 9, the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Clint Capella. And again, they're only at 9 because there's so much competition ahead of them. And this is the same 5 we saw from them last year. And they really didn't make any offseason moves because they didn't need to. But they're still going to seem like a new fresh team because everyone they have is still so young and developing. So we don't necessarily know how much better these players are going to be. They got 5 or 6 guys on this team, all under 25 that could break out at any time. And we saw how good the squad did in the playoffs, and they didn't even have their key piece in DeAndre Hunter. They took the NBA champs to 6 games without their best defender, and I'm a huge fan of his. If he continues to develop this season at the same pace, it'll be huge. And their starters are so complete in every aspect. 3 out of 5 of them are excellent shooters from deep. We still have Stockton and Malone 2.0, DeAndre Hunter to be the team's star defensively, Bogdanovic, who I like to think of as a wild card, who can put up huge numbers any night, and Clint Capella, who pairs with Trae nearly as good as Collins does. And for this video, I can't even get started on their bench, but they have nearly just as much talent on it. And if we're including benches, Atlanta would rank much higher because they're one of the deepest teams in the entire league. Number 8, the Boston Celtics with Dennis Schroeder, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Al Horford. And Boston was very busy this offseason. And I've seen a lot of people crapping on the Celtics for some of the moves that they've made, like giving Robert Williams a big contract and trading Kimba for Al Horford, but I don't think I could be too much happier with everything they did. They needed a center and they needed to trade Walker, so it only made sense to get Al, who would fit perfect back in their starting lineup. I never like when a player gets traded back to the same team, especially only a couple seasons later, but given their situation, it made sense. And it couldn't have worked out any better with Dennis Schroeder signing with them. As for Robert Williams, they see him day to day, and the Celtics always have a pretty good eye for talent, so if they believe in investing in him for the future, I'm cool with that. And they did things like losing out on Fournier but get Josh Richardson to make up for it, and re-sign Marcus Smart, which were both good moves. But okay, enough with their offseason. For this 5 though, like I said, they fixed all their issues and now have Jason and Jaylen still as their stars, Schroeder who can do it all and play point, so Marcus Smart doesn't have to, which is good because at times it was rough when he did, and Smart's been developing a good amount on offense too, so he's a great player to have at shooting guard. And I love them having himself and Jaylen Brown as their two elite defenders. Then Al Horford, who's also good on that end and can tie things all together. I'm just a little worried about them playing kinda small with Jason at the 4 and Horford, who's not an elite rebounder or post-up guy, at the 5. But it may or may not work in their favor, so we'll see. Number 7, the Suns with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton. Not really much to say here. It's the exact same squad we saw in the finals, but they just played so well there, and throughout the postseason I had to rank them in at least 7. Some might say they should be ranked higher since they made the finals, but again, I'm basing it off of the starters, and the Suns were great as a whole, but some teams have starters that I'm a little bit more of a fan of. I'm excited to see how much better if any of their young guys in Booker, Bridges, and Ayton come out though. Personally though, I think they'll show huge improvements because the game's now probably slowed down a lot to them after experiencing what a playoff run and finals is really like. But yeah, I also don't expect CP3 to drop off really any. I think he's going to be just as good as he was last year, but we just gotta hope that a big injury doesn't happen as he starts to get older and older. Number 6, we have the Miami Heat with Kyle Lowry, Victor Oladipo, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, and Bam Adebayo. And this is one of my favorite 5s in the league. The Heat came in under the radar and created an entirely new starting 5 that has huge potential. I think these guys are going to finish with a top 3 seed in the East as a whole, especially with some of the guys they still got coming off the bench. But this is just about the starters, and the only thing that worries me here is their 3-point shooting and ability to stretch the floor. Kyle's a good shooter, but Oladipo's not the best, Jimmy isn't good, Tucker's inconsistent, and Adebayo's non-existent from deep. So it may be better off having Duncan Robinson start and Oladipo coming off the bench if it becomes a problem. But even then, this squad would still be a top 10 starting lineup. They just need the offense to be there. They got a ton of defense, but 4 guys who sometimes struggle on the other end, and it's why they don't rank any higher. And if things don't go well when they're actually together, it's why they could deserve to drop in the future on this list. Number 5 goes to the Denver Nuggets with Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. And there's only one guy in this lineup that's ever been an all-star, but it's so perfectly assembled that they at least deserve this spot. Murray and Jokic are great together, Barton's a go-to scorer, Aaron Gordon's the perfect defender that they desperately need in this lineup, and MPJ's a perfect scorer to spread the floor and be a 3rd or 4th option to score when needed. Plus, he's going to come into this year hopefully more developed than last. If everyone stays healthy the whole year, the Denver Nuggets might end up being next year's champs. They need to make some more moves to work on their depth, but I don't think there's anything they could possibly do to make the starting lineup any better. Number 4 is then taken by the Milwaukee Bucks for Drew Holiday, Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. Drew, Chris, and Giannis were the 3 biggest factors in their championships, so obviously they mainly carried this lineup to the number 4 spot. We didn't get to see Dante in the finals, but we know his consistent offense and upper tier defense complements these other 4 pretty well. And even though Brook's not consistent, he's still obviously a great fit. And you might have thought that since this 5 led the Bucks to the title, that they'd rank in at number 1, but that's not the case because the teams ahead of them all now have players that are injury free or new lineups that they didn't have last season. Plus, the Bucks had a ton of help off the bench that other teams just didn't, and their bench was a huge part of their success. That's not taking anything away from the starters though. They still have 3 guys that are all top 30. And I don't think they're better than number 3 in the Golden State Warriors though, because they have Steph Curry, the now healthy Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and James Wiseman. They have the big 3 from their best years finally all healthy and back together. And I feel like a lot of people are underestimating them coming back this year. I feel like people aren't taking them as seriously as they should be. This big 3 forever changed the NBA and literally dominated it like no one ever has before. And they still have Andre Iguodala on the team, who was a huge part of their success. But he is much older than he was. But it's okay because they have Wiggins in the starting lineup, and he's much better offensively than Andre was at that time, and plays a similar role on defense. Plus, Wiseman really blew it last season. But if he actually comes out and plays like he should now, then he has potential to be better than any center that this squad has played with, which is why they'll once again be a serious threat. Number 2, I'm gonna give it to the Los Angeles Lakers with Russell Westbrook, Malik Monk in the starting lineup. I'm guessing LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Dwight Howard, and I got a lot of problems with this team. I think there's a good chance it's not gonna work. With Westbrook playing with these guys, LeBron aging another year, and with Anthony Davis's inability to stay healthy, it leaves a lot to worry about if you're the Lakers. But in the small chance that things all go well, they have 3 starters from their championship roster: Malik Monk, who's a scorer, an excellent shooter to play off their stars, and Russ, who could be a difference maker if used right. And that's not even to mention their bench, who at this point is making them look like the deepest team in the entire league. Listen, in my opinion, this team's got way more talent than last year, but I don't think it's gonna work. I don't think they'll make the finals, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them out in the second round. Then finally, for number 1, I don't think anyone can deny that the Nets deserve this spot, with the same starting lineup as last year with James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. And the only thing that can get in this team's way is injuries again, like we saw last season. If healthy though, I think it's hard to argue that this team would have won it all. They have the most pure talent in their 5 out of any team in the league by far, with 3 superstars all in their prime. KD's the best player in the league, Harden's a top 5 to 10 player, and Kyrie's at least top 15. Not even to mention Blake played great and took another pay cut to stick in Brooklyn. But it is a year later and we still have barely gotten to see them all 3 play together and see what they could really do. Chances are though, their injuries are all now out of the way, and we're gonna get to see them healthy for the majority of this year. So again, they're my bet to win it all this season, and those are my picks for the top 10 starting 5s in the NBA today. What are yours? Comment down below and let me know, and I'll catch you next time.